Alright, so let's take a look at how we will design the intents for the quiz bot. When the user triggers the default welcome intent, you can see that I have the simple response in the Google Assistant tab which says, hi, which of these is used to keep track of the current state of a Dialogflow conversation. And then I have these four options as suggestion chips. This is pretty standard, just like what you might expect we should have. And I didn't actually, I forgot to mention something. When the default welcome intent is triggered, we also make sure that we set an output context, and that is going to be await underscore answer 1. Now, if you go back to the list of intents, there are two possibilities. The user could answer the question correctly, and in that case what we are going to do is we will, of course, here you have to remember that the input context is going to be await underscore answer 1 and the output is going to be await answer 2, and the training phrase is just going to be the correct answer. And if you go and look at the Google Assistant tab, you will notice that it's going to say correct, that's the correct answer, and then it's going to ask the next question, and then it's going to have the suggestion chips corresponding to the multiple choices which are available. On the other hand, if the user were to select the incorrect choice, now what we don't want to do is put all the choices as a list in the intent itself. Now this is a bit of a subjective thing. You may want to put it as a option. You may want to put each of those options also in the intent, but the simpler way is just to put some word here and just annotate it as sys.any. And the idea here is, of course, remember that await underscore answer 1 is still the input context, await underscore answer 2 is still the output context, but the idea here is that this intent will only actually fire if Dialogflow is not able to find a better match for what the user said. And wildcard entity, like what we have here, is lower priority than an actual training phrase, which is in the case of the correct answer, the phrase context is the actual training phrase, and if the user says context, it will fire the intent called answer1.correct, and if the user selects anything else from that list, it's going to say it's the incorrect answer. And this is because it's going to not go into this intent. It's not going to fire this intent, which is the wildcard entity intent, unless it cannot find a better match. So I hope that that makes sense, because that's sort of an important point in getting this whole thing to work. That is the lower priority of the wildcard entity intent when it compared to an intent which has a proper training phrase. So in this case, if you go and look at the Google Assistant tab, what you're going to see is the first response is the correct answer is so and so, and then it's going to ask the same question and then give the same options. And as you remember, we have the same output context also set. Now we will take a look at the answer2.correct and answer2.incorrect are going to be similar. That is, answer2.correct will have an input context of await underscore answer 2 and output context of await underscore answer 3. Otherwise, it's quite similar in design to answer1.correct, and you're going to have the same thing with answer3.correct also, except that I want to go into this intent and show you something. As you might imagine, this answer 3 correct it has await underscore answer 3 as the input context. Notice that the only training phrase I have is the fallback intent, and then the Google Assistant response with correct, and then the next is thanks for taking the quiz. Now I showed you some sort of a bug in the demo when we were looking at the demo in the video, and I said I'll come back and explain what is going on here. Now the reason that, if you remember what happened in our demo, is that let's just quickly take a look at the demo again. What will happen in the demo is that it's going to, okay, so I think it's been a while since I recorded it, so it's lost the context, so I'm going to start over. So it's going to say which of these is used to keep track. I say context, and then over here I'm going to say ML threshold, and this is going to be correct. And here there are two options which are almost similar, right? Fallback intent and follow-up intent. And if I clicked on follow-up intent, notice that even though the answer is incorrect, it's actually coming back with correct, thanks for taking the quiz. So in other words, this intent, answer 3.correct, fired even though we don't actually have follow-up intent as part of the training phrase. So what is going on here? Now what is happening is that when you think about it, Dialogflow is still using a sort of a pattern matching to match the user's utterance to the training phrases you already have declared inside the intent. And follow-up intent and fallback intent are close enough that it does not think, that is, Dialogflow does not think that they are two different phrases. Now what you can do, so what one way to handle it is actually to go and look at this thing here, and you see this thing called disable ML. And if I were to select that, and then if I were to save this intent, now what is going to happen in that case is that it is going to only trigger this intent if the training phrase and the user's utterance are an exact match. So unless the user says exactly the words fallback intent, it's not going to trigger this particular intent. Instead, it's going to go to the fallback. So let's go and verify that. Now let's say context. ML threshold. So if I were to say follow-up intent in this case, you can see that it's coming back with sorry, the answer is fallback intent, thanks for taking the quiz. So what's happened is that this intent is not going to fire because the match is inexact. Now this is one way to handle it. Now you can also think of other ways to handle it. One of the more, you can say, like sillier ways to handle it would be to not have identical looking responses to the actual answer, and in a way that would be a sort of an unfortunate thing, because in the quizzes, if you want to make a quiz a little tougher, usually you are looking for very similar responses, and that's what is likely to cause a little more hesitation in the students or the person who's answering the quiz, in their mind. So the fact that if you choose very similar sounding answers, and Dialogflow itself can get thrown off by such options is a bit of a problem. So you may want to come back to using this disable and enable ML as the option. You may want to tweak that and just see like how far you can go with using that as the actual, using that as to enforce the correct answer from the user. So that's how you will design the intent for a Dialogflow agent which is going to conduct the quiz.